Hello, my name is Drew Moore. This video is about Taylor versus Wake Forest University through William Woods, EDU 503. In 1965, Wake Forest University was recruiting Greg Taylor to come play football for the university. George Taylor, Greg's father, and Greg submitted an application entitled, quote, Atlantic Coast Conference Application for a Football Grant and Aid or a Scholarship, end quote, on February 27, 1967. On May 24, 1967, Wake Forest University accepted the application. It is important to know what the contract stated. It said, this grant, if awarded, will be for 4 years provided I conduct myself in accordance with the rules of the conference, the NCAA, and the institution. I agree to maintain eligibility for intercollegiate athletics under both conference and institutional rules. Training rules for intercollegiate athletics are considered rules of the institution, and I agree to abide by them. And then it goes on to talk about injuries and how if they get an injury under the supervision of a coach, then they're still allowed to keep their scholarship and such. That doesn't really apply as much to this case. It continues. This grant, when approved, is awarded for academic and athletic achievement and is not to be interpreted as employment in any manner whatsoever. In summary, Greg Taylor was expected to follow all rules set by the governing bodies, which includes training and academic eligibility. It wasn't until January of 1969 that Wake Forest had a grant and aid policy in written form. One of these policies stated that financial aid can be ended for, quote, refusal to attend practice sessions or scheduled workouts that are part of the athletic program or to act in such a manner as to disrupt these sessions, end quote. And we will come back to that here in a little bit. Greg Taylor decided to accept the scholarship and enroll at Wake Forest in the fall of 1967. As his scholarship stated, he would play football for them that fall. However, at the end of the fall semester, Greg had a 1.0 grade point average, or GPA, on a 4.0 scale. Freshmen were required to have a 1.35 after both semesters of their freshman year, 1.65 for sophomores, 1.85 for juniors. Clearly, Greg had not gotten himself off to a good start and was at that moment below the 1.35 freshman expectation. However, Greg would still have the second semester to meet the requirement. As with all football programs, Wake Forest would hold spring workouts and practices. Greg told the coach that he would not participate in the spring workouts in order to focus more on his academics. For the second semester, Greg earned a 1.9 GPA, which put him past the requirement for freshman academics. Despite his improvement with his grades, Greg decided that he would no longer participate in football activities. In the fall of 1968, Greg's grades continued to climb and he received a 2.4 GPA, but he still refused to participate in the spring activities. As I stated, the university did not have a written grant and aid policy until January of 1969. Greg Taylor was notified that on May 14, 1969, that there would be a hearing held in which there would be discussion about whether he would get to keep his football scholarship. The faculty athletic committee decided that the right course of action would be to terminate his scholarship. The ruling was eventually upheld. Greg continued to be enrolled at Wake Forest and graduated in May of 1971. As a result of the previous termination, the university felt like the family should reimburse $5,500 in academic expenses because he was no longer on scholarship. Greg's father, George, contested that it was orally agreed that, quote, in the event of any conflict between educational achievement and athletic involvement, participation in athletic activities could be limited or eliminated to the extent necessary to assure reasonable academic progress, end quote. I disagree with the Taylor family in this situation. In the contract it stated, again, quote, I agree to maintain eligibility for intercollegiate athletics under both conference and institutional rules. Training rules for the intercollegiate athletics are considered rules of the institution and I agree to abide by them, end quote. Once Greg decided that he would no longer be a part of the football program, he violated that contract based on the training rules. While the written grant and aid policy did not come about until a few years later, stating he had to attend practices, it was still written in his original contract that he would be expected to train and participate when required. Personally, I don't believe that there should be much of a case, if any. In every aspect of life, we are expected to abide by contracts, usually when it comes to employment and business, but as we all know, the collegiate landscape is still a business. This is why the pay for play has become such a hot button issue. While it may be cruel, the Taylor family should have to pay back the extra expenses because the reason Greg went there in the first place was because of a scholarship to play football and get a cheaper or free education. A student athlete should not be allowed to take advantage of the system in that way. Thank you.